All right, so the last group of countries that we're going to talk about today is going to be the coastal countries. 11 smaller countries just south of the Sahel. Landscape is going to be more savanna, more tropical, more rainfall, larger amount of plant life living in a place like this. So when we look at it on the map, we're talking about basically here from Senegal all the way around through here like Togo, Benin, okay, in this area right here. These are the coastal countries. First off, location leads to trade. There's really going to be two big advantages that the Sahel is going to have I'm sorry, that the coastal countries are going to have over the Sahel. First of all, a wetter climate. Wetter climate means you're able to grow more food. Don't underestimate the ability to grow your own food and not have to depend on someone else. Okay, so that is going to be a big, major advantage that they're going to have. Second is access to the sea. Because they're on the ocean, because they're going to have ports, that's going to mean that European traders in the early parts of exploration before the 1500s, let's say, are going to be able to sail right directly in, make contacts with the tribes, and start to trade with the peoples there. Because they're going to be on these big ships, that's going to mean they're able to put a lot of cargo onto those ships and sail back. That's going to lead to the Saharan trade becoming less and less and less important. So those big tribes that we talked about previously that became wealthy in the Sahel, they're going to lose a lot of their importance as well. How has it changed? Well, after the discovery of the New World and North and South America, that's going to mean that a lot of that European attention is going to turn from Africa over to that newly found area. So today they really only export just a few products. Really, not a whole lot coming out of there today. They're going to import a lot, not going to export a lot. It's so unequal that they estimate that just to pay the interest on the items that they have to buy from other countries, it would cost somewhere in the range of about $9 billion, and that doesn't actually pay for the things that they're getting from these other countries. Struggles for power. All right, so Europeans ruled into the 1960s. After World War II, you saw the Europeans gain a major interest in Africa. You saw a lot of colonization of African nations in that post World War II era. And they're going to rule here into the 1960s, some even into the 1970s. Um, when the Europeans come in, they're really looking for how can they take advantage of the resources that they believe or that they hope that these African nations will have. Um, when they come in and colonize and they draw boundaries, they really don't pay much attention to where tribes are located. They don't pay much attention to, well, this tribe and this tribe don't like each other. They're just going to draw lines on a map that suit them, and it's going to ultimately lead to big problems down the road. When the Europeans do finally leave, a lot of times what they leave behind are a lot of very weak governments. They leave behind situations where people are not ready to lead. They leave behind situations where they've not trained anybody to take over a position in the government, and it leads to a lot of chaos. A lot of military coups are going to take over a lot of governments because, well, who's going to stop them? You saw it trend towards democracy in the 1990s. It has slowed since then, primarily because, hey, you know what? Democracy takes a long time. It's slow. It's something that you have to be patient in order for it to work. And in a lot of these countries, the militaries, the rebel groups, they're just not willing to wait. We're going to look at two countries just to give you a couple of examples of how life is in this part of the world. First one being Liberia. Okay, Liberia was originally established in 1822, and it was established. by the United States, Liberia. Even the name sounds like liberty. Um, the capital is Monrovia after President James Monroe. It was really established as a place for freed American slaves to return to Africa. They figured it was probably not the greatest idea to just have ships come across the Atlantic, drop people off on the coast, and say, "Have a nice day." Needed to have some place for them to go back to where they can establish themselves. Liberia becomes that colony, basically. Fast forward to 1980, like we said, military coup is going to come in. By 89, tensions have risen to a point where they've actually begun a civil war. Violence got so bad that humanitarian aid actually withdrew. Groups like the Red Cross, for example, a lot of times they'll go into areas that are experiencing violence. It got so bad that groups like that were actually leaving. That war ended finally in 1996, had democratic elections, and they have been trying to establish more of an American model since then. Other country is going to be Sierra Leone. Now, Sierra Leone, they also had democratic elections in 1996. It did not last very long. By May of '97, that government had already been overthrown. That led to invasions by a lot of the countries that were around them, and anarchy resulted, or a lack of rule of law. The reason that these other countries wanted to invade Sierra Leone because they have a major resource that most of the rest of the world wants and is willing to pay big money for: diamonds. So a lot of the diamond mines in Sierra Leone are controlled by various rebel groups, and they mine those diamonds and they sell them in an effort to fund their fights against the government. Um, that's why when you go out and you choose to buy any kind of jewelry, let's say you want to buy a diamond ring, you'll want to make sure you buy it from a reputable dealer who can trace exactly where the diamond came from. You do not want to get in the business of buying blood diamonds. Okay, blood diamonds are going to be ones from groups like this that, yes, they may be a little bit cheaper, but ultimately by buying that, you are helping this rebel group, enslave a town and make I don't know, a 7-year-old girl stay chained up in a mine somewhere. Make sure you buy it from reputable dealers. 2014 to 16, you might remember there was a major Ebola outbreak in this part of the world. Sierra Leone was at the center of it all. Now, that all being said, they actually have had some substantial economic growth lately. Um, if there is one country in this part of the world that has an opportunity to really kind of change things for themselves, it's going to be Sierra Leone, primarily because they have that major resource that a lot of other people don't in diamonds. Cultural roles. You are going to see a very traditional society here. Okay, we're not going to mask that, but their version of a traditional society actually is quite different from what you're going to see in a lot of other places, specifically with regards to the role that women and children are going to play. In in society here in Western Africa, women actually play a huge role in both politics and economics, where you don't see that in a lot of traditional type of places. Politically, a lot of grassroots efforts. Hey, let's start change at a local level and have it get bigger from there. A lot of that comes from the women in their society. Growing crops, running the co-ops or the markets that might sell those crops. A lot of those are things that are traditionally done by men in these types of societies. But in Western Africa, you actually do see a very large role that women are going to play in these types of things as well. Children are seen as very, very valuable for a lot of different reasons. One is that, hey, you know what? The more kids you have, the more potential workers you have for the field or in your business. So you'll see very, very large families here, first off, because they can serve as valuable workers. Secondly, has to do with religion. If you're a group like the Asante, the Asante believe their children play a major role in their afterlife. Kind of like if you've seen the movie Coco. Same kind of concept. The more people that you have thinking about you and keeping your memory alive after you've died, the better your afterlife is. So if you're somebody that was, of the Asante, ancestor worship is going to be a major part of your religion. You'll also see animism. Be a part of the religious beliefs here. That's the idea that hey, there's a spirit of the tree, spirit of the rock. There's a sun god, things of that nature. You're going to have nature play a major role in your religious beliefs. Okay, um, we just said that children are very very valuable, so you'll see large families, and that is shown in the population growth here as well. They have some of the highest rates of any place in the world. Ghana, for example, 29 births for every 1,000 people is an extremely high number. So very, very, very large families in this part of the world. And lastly, for today, the triangular trade is going to come from this part of the world. And I really wish we had more time to go into this. But this is something that you'll certainly talk about when you get into like U.S. history class, things like that. The triangular trade is going to come up after the New World is discovered. So in that area between like 1500 and 1700, 1800, you're going to see this part of Africa. The European traders are going to essentially they're going to get this part of the world very very dependent on European goods. And then when times change and now they're starting to pay more attention over here, now it's not going to be, hey, we want goods from here. We want slaves from here. So what they're going to do is they're going to go into those tribes where they've gotten people very dependent on their goods, and they're going to threaten to take those things away if they don't provide slaves. They'll even go so far, European traders will, as to and you'll pit one tribe against another tribe so that they can sell that other tribe's people into slavery. So ultimately, the European traders are going to get what they want, but it is the Africans tribes themselves that do sell each other into slavery. So slaves are going to go across here to replace, Indian or native populations that are dying off here. They will also go to be, slaves in the southern parts of the United States. But this is when you talk about triangular trade or the Columbian Exchange. This is what we're talking